I'm Amanda Leiter, and welcome to Rochester Rising, where we amplify stories of Rochester entrepreneurs. Welcome to episode 185 of the podcast. So today we check in with our latest Inspirational Collisions series, where we talk with Rochester entrepreneurs and learn how they're building their business in Rochester, why they're building their business in Rochester, and at the end of the discussion, these entrepreneurs leave listeners with some actionable item, resource, or advice that the listener can apply to their personal or professional life. So today, in our latest Inspirational Collision series, we check in with Ahmed Makkawy and Anthony Kinyanjui of Quizzem. Anthony is a developer and team leader. He has a background in web design, and he also has a degree in forensic science, and he has particular expertise in domain registration and hosting, especially in Africa. Ahmed is a software engineer. He started his career at IBM before launching his other business, the Hera Fox Creative Agency, in 2010. He's skilled in web technologies, user experience, and user interface design, and is the current program manager at Google in Mountain View, California, in addition to both Ahmed and Anthony's role with Quizzem. So on the podcast today, in this conversation, we talk about how Quizzem began as a homegrown idea and developed into an educational experience to gamify learning through quizzes on mobile devices for kids. In the discussion today, we talk about the process of building the Quizzem app in Rochester. We talk about Ahmed and Anthony's passions for being entrepreneurial. We also talk about their thoughts on assets and gaps in the Rochester entrepreneurial community and how they've been building their personal network here in Rochester. So don't miss out on this conversation today. And at the end, Ahmed and Anthony leave you with some advice that you can apply to your professional growth and development. So stay tuned for this really engaging and fantastic conversation. So in addition to this conversation being on today's podcast, it also aired as a premiere video on the Rochester Rising Facebook and YouTube pages last week. So you can check it out there as well if you'd prefer to watch as well as listen in. A reminder that Rochester Rising is the storytelling arm of Collider. Collider's a 501c3 nonprofit based in Rochester, Minnesota that supports Rochester entrepreneurs through events, education, space, and storytelling. You can learn more about Collider by visiting our website at collider.mn. So in addition to catching us on our newest podcast, which come out every Wednesday, wherever you listen into podcast content, including on Spotify and YouTube, you can check out more stories about Rochester entrepreneurs on our website at rochesterrising.org. We're also on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. So you can basically connect with us wherever you prefer to link up with your content, and we are there. All right, so now on to our Inspirational Collisions discussion today with Ahmed and Anthony of Quizzem. Well, thanks for doing this, being here today, connecting via Zoom. I think I'll start by asking you both to introduce yourselves and then tell everybody a little bit of your background and journey.
Anthony, go for it.
Well, I'm a developer / team leader. So I bring developers together and manage them in the development of product, mostly applications, software, and also concepts that will rely on technology at some point as a major component of how they expect to execute. My background is actually on web design. I have done web design and apps for almost 10 years now, actually about 11 years since I started in 2009. And I am also involved with domain registration and hosting, mostly in Africa. So that's my background.
Very good. I'll go. So by training, I guess, or schooling. I'm a computer science grad, so a software engineer. Started out at IBM as a software engineer, kind of quickly learning that I really wanted to work with people more and engage in the entrepreneurial community more. So similar to Anthony, I guess, started my spin-off company, or my Sahara Fox creative agency in 2010. So it's been about 10 years. And primarily have been working in web technologies, really deep dove or made the shift from strictly programming to user experience and user interface design since then. And currently into kind of shifting into management, career-wise, shifting into program management. So currently a program manager at Google in Mountain View, California.
Awesome. Well, thanks both of you to being here today. And this is definitely, a nationwide central US and then the West Coast. So that's the beauty of Zoom. So we wanted to talk about Quizzem today. So can you talk a little bit more about what that is and what people would expect, how people would use Quizzem?
I could do a brief intro on that. So Greg Smith of Racine, Minnesota. He is the owner of Smith Construction. Sent me, he called me. This was a couple of years ago now. He called me and says, I looked you up. It looks like you do some web and app development. He had already been working with a friend of mine, Kevin, who does web design as well, who kind of passed a reference or a lead. And he says, I'd like to talk to you about an app idea. I never turn those meetings down because I always find them interesting, whether it's meeting the person is interesting or learning about the idea, et cetera. So I head down there, and on my way down, I remember wondering what this app, because I'm curious like that, wondering what this app might be, what the app concept would be, and kind of knowing a little bit about Greg's industry. I'm thinking it could be in the storage space, maybe the renting a spot or construction, managing projects or scope of work. Anyways, I get there, and Greg, the first thing he says, I think after a meeting, is, you know how kids sometimes have trouble with screen time and they're always on their phones playing games? Do you think there's a way that we can lock the phone until they get a certain number of questions right, or finish a portion of their homework before unlocking their phone? And that blew my mind because it was so far out of what I thought this app would be. So that's how Quizzem got started. It was just an idea with really a homegrown idea with his children just needing, or with Greg really, needing a way to source some kind of limitations on screen time on these gameplay on their devices until they, start to excel a little bit within some of the classes they were taking. So that's where it started. We started thinking through how to create an educational experience on the device. We knew that locking the device completely down wouldn't be an option on Android and iOS, but trying to get creative about how that would work, how to incentivize and gamify the experience of learning through these quizzes.
So I wanted to ask you a little bit about your experience building this in Rochester. So what was kind of that process like? And can you talk specifically too about kind of barriers and challenges that you faced while building this here? And then how did you or did you not kind of navigate those roadblocks?
You have to be scrappy here, and here being Rochester. And I say that because it's really there's a scarcity of resource. And so initially when I heard the idea, when I got back to my desk, I'm not an app developer by any stretch of the imagination. So when I got back to my desk at my day job, I'm thinking, how will I get this done? My friend Nick, who I worked with, is an iOS developer, and and was dabbling with a similar concept, really for his kids as well, or for his daughter specifically, with working on spelling words. So through conversations, I knew he was working on this kind of pet project where the app would say or define the word, and his daughter would have to spell it out or enter in the word spelled correctly. So that's where this all started, because I kind of put one and one together. I'm like, I know you have this pet project. You told me about it. It sounded amazing. Crazy thing is, I just heard from a potential client that is looking for something similar, except for it's paired with these other things, a little bit more complex, where quizzes would be shared and whatnot. So are you interested in taking this on? And he was. So I say you have to be scrappy, because it's really, you have to pull threads from conversations and really lean into, your network, into how you'll get it done. And then soon thereafter, about a year after this all started, I came to Anthony saying something similar. Like Nick had to, move to the cities, or is living in Rochester, but working in the cities. So I lost my iOS developer, and we need to really start thinking about Android. What do you think? I just had heard that he was in the app space, and had been working in web. So that's how our conversation started, into how we were going to find a developer, if he knew anyone, how we could quiz or test a developer. I remember asking, what kind of questions I should be asking them to really find a good team. And that's how our conversation started.
So I wanted to ask both of you, we talked about being scrappy, trying to find resources when they're slim. And that's very, entrepreneurial in what it takes. But why are both of you, what's both of your passions for being entrepreneurial or for doing something like this, as opposed to really anything else you could be doing?
Yeah, I think there's a real reward in terms of gratification when you can build something from conversational concepts and see it come to life. I always consider any product, maybe a website, an app, as a baby. So there's a real joy to, having an idea of what someone expects, and taking those conversations and working it through with the developers, and at the end of the day, presenting the product. And once it's launched on the App Store or the Play Store, seeing it and people using it, that's literally like when a baby has been born. It's so exciting. You don't know what the future is, but there's still a lot of work to be done for the baby to really mature. But it's very exciting to move something from a concept to a product that is being used. And being an entrepreneur is I think the only space where you can realize these things, because most of when you do a normal job, you don't get to dictate that journey, but literally you are like a mother as an entrepreneur. Yeah. So I think that's very exciting.
I'd have to say something similar. Very similar, but my twist is I get the energy from connection, like just connecting a person to an idea, or ideas to people is more apt. So whether that's a networking event in the morning, where I hear an idea and 5 minutes later I'm talking to someone else, and I'm able to say, you should talk to so and so, because I think you would make something great. It's like speed dating between ideas and people. Is making those connections. So that's the way I see it. That's why I really enjoy entrepreneurship and kind of that startup mentality.
So what do you see as the next step with Quizzem, and what resources do you need to get to that point?
Quizzem is a fantastic idea because it really helps. The apps that are out there now are really either in the education space where it's strictly testing against curriculum, or they're, fun games and apps that are helping kids at home, learn a specific concept. This is really creating that bridge between an educator and parent, and as a result, the student, right? So that the parent understands the curriculum that's being shared in the classroom and is able to reward their students with customer awards or whatever it may be at home. And that really helps kind of create that connection. So the next step, definitely our big milestone was working on multi-platform, so iOS and Android web as a result. I think the next step will be to engage publishers. So teachers, to lift some of the burden off of teachers creating these quizzes or parents creating these quizzes based on curriculum. We'd really like to work with a publisher, local or national, that would be able to source and create their own quizzes and then share those with the teachers or share those online with us through a quiz store of some sort. And then the second step would be the reach, right? So Anthony and I both have kind of some connections in education, so we're able to share to different academies, school systems. This is for mentoring and tutoring as well. So any of the local groups that do that sort of thing. But it will be increased reach. So forming some kind of, our strategy for marketing and sales, really.
I also think that as far as the journey of Quizzem is concerned, still a very young product, and there are a lot more features and a lot more streamlining that is on the way. And having developing Quizzem further is going to be extremely useful to teachers, parents, and educators in general. We find it extremely useful. We hope that, and we also expect to learn from how the users interact with it and improve it based on that feedback.
Yep, user feedback's always so important, right?
Big piece of it.
Yes.
Yep. So I wanted to ask both of you too. Ahmed, you've been in Rochester for several years. Anthony, I think it's been about a year and a half, right, that you've been in Rochester. So what do you both see as kind of assets in the entrepreneurial community here? And what do you see as, we were talking about deficit of resources, what's not here, or what can the community be doing better that would be helpful, on your journey?
Yeah, so first, for me, the last 1 year and a half has been, there have been challenges, but also there's a lot that I have learned. And being in a space like Collider has facilitated in developing and growing me a lot. And I think spaces like Collider and the environment are very good assets because without these spaces, really, you don't have an entrepreneurial space, really. Because otherwise, I would be doing my own thing at my place. Someone else is doing their own thing at their place. You have no way of connecting. So spaces like Collider and the events that revolve around the space are extremely useful. So those are assets that I think other people will also find very useful. In terms of things that maybe could be improved is I feel like Collider and Rochester in general needs to get more spotlight because it has a lot, but I don't think a lot more people know about it like they ought to. the hope is like someone in Florida or someone in Texas knows about Rochester in Minnesota as a place where they can come and realize their, dream, the same way people go to the West Coast and go to California for the same. So I think that is the ideal trajectory for the community.
I can talk about people because I like what Anthony mentions. I'm going to take the other angle, however, and say, while realizing the resources that Rochester has for the entrepreneurial community, I think very similarly, the community should realize its entrepreneurial potential. And that is to say, everyone has Rochester is primarily this large employer landscape, right? With Mayo Clinic and IBM and others, several industries, but it's primarily in that space. And most cities are, I suppose. But to try to shift that focus, and my friend Io has a podcast about this now as well, and then kind of an author in the space. But to realize as an individual that you can be more than one thing, that you can be a surgeon during the day and a woodworker, at night, or a craftsman during the day, and you can have a web design business, in the evening, and you can slowly shift and realize a dream that you might have. It takes those steps, and maybe that takes training to realize that one can overtake the other, and your unrealized dream or your potential in the entrepreneurial space has to start at a pivotal moment or a conversation. And that's one thing I notice online when I have conversations is, someone will share something like, oh, the one that came up the other day is someone was listing bear mace, typical for, camping or hiking for rent, right? So renting it for $10. And it was a weird post. And I think I looked into it a little bit. The individual is a nurse. Mayo Clinic had just gone on a camping trip or a hiking trip or something, and just wanted a way to share this item that cost her $50 with others and maybe realize that cost. So to identify, not only how will I rent this bear mace out, but maybe that turns into something else. Maybe just because you've listed this item, perhaps that can spin off into you could be an outfitter, for example. You can create a whole business out of this should you choose. So it's kind of turning those key moments into, trying to rent or sell one item into maybe this could be a business, and how do I do that? And who do I connect with? I think sometimes that can be the greatest barrier. So maybe areas where we can work on education or just these spark moments, identifying those moments in someone's life where you can introduce them to the resources that help them create something.
Yeah, I love that example because I sometimes think we feel that whatever we create has to be like this. There's a book, what is it called? Zero to, I don't know what it's called now, but just thinking that you have to like go exponentially like above what's existing, when it's like, just make someone's life easier or like do something that positively impacts your own life. That's entrepreneurial, not like creating your own market or, something that people aren't used to. Because if it's too far ahead, people don't know what to do with it.
Yeah. That's why the bear mace thing struck me so well yesterday, because the more I started thinking about it, the more I'm like, well, yes, we have Tyrol and we have some others, that I'm sure have some rental outfitting, resources, but why not start this little, if you have some hiking, camping gear, why not create, a rental agreement of some kind and really turn this into a business? So.
That's pretty cool, because I'm sure like, how often do you need to buy bear mace? And then hopefully you never have to use bear mace.
Exactly. I bought it for $50. Yeah, like the more I started thinking about it, that's the entrepreneurial side, because the more I started thinking about the one that I had, didn't use, thankfully, but then expired, and there goes $50. I definitely would have perhaps rented it. So.
I would rent it for $10, I think, rather than buy it. So I had some follow-up questions for you guys. I've been reading this book. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called It's About Damn Time by Arlen Hamilton. It's a really great book. So she is an African-American gay woman, so extremely like underestimated, underrepresented. But basically she noticed that there were no women, Black women and gay women who were venture capitalists. So she decided to change that with no experience, no money. She launched something called Backstage. I think it's called Backstage Ventures or Backstage Capital. Anyway, I loved this comment you guys made about a strong network, because in her book, she said, she had no financial capital. So when you don't have resources, your network is your resources. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that. And then how do you build that network, especially when you're starting from you both moved here, you didn't know anybody. How do you start building that network?
Okay. So the strangest thing is when I came to Rochester, I never knew about Rochester until I came here. And the only thing I ever knew about remotely about this place was Mayo Clinic, because as an undergrad, I did forensic science for my undergrad. So you would be doing research and saying this was done at Mayo Clinic. That was as far as I knew about Rochester and this place. And on the very second day after I got here, it was extremely cold, very cold. And because it was like the winter had just started. And I went to Cafe Steam on Broadway. And I had taken some skyways and had walked a part of it on the street, but I didn't know my way back. So I asked the guys at the coffee shop, I want to go back to the library, because that's where I had come to the coffee shop from. I asked, I want to go back to the library. How do I go back without walking on the street? And they said, and later would get to, of course, get familiar with Will, who is a co-owner at Cafe Steam. He was like, hey, there's this guy. He knows how you can get back. Turns out this was Adam Salmi. And Adam was like, okay, I'll show you how to get back to the library without walking on the street. So as we were walking towards the library, I asked him, what do you do? And then we engaged in a conversation. And I told him a little bit about myself. And he was like, there is this place called Collider. It would be really good. You should talk to Jamie. And he gave me Jamie's contact. And so the following day, I sent Jamie a message, I think so. And we arranged a meeting. I came and met Jamie. He told me more about the space and all that. And that's how I ended up at Collider. But then Jamie also introduced me to other people based on what I was doing. And from that, I got to create a network. And when you think about it, it is a very unlikely route, towards knowing the space, in that when you have conversations with people, you never know what they might lead to, because Adam would have, shown me this is the way to the library and that's it. Probably I would have known about Collider far much later than I did. But those conversations that you have with people that sometimes you might not think might lead to something actually are very powerful. So one should somehow normalize getting to know about people and what they do. And you should also normalize giving people a brief about yourself and what you do. because even when one is a venture capitalist or a developer or someone who might become extremely important in your network, they don't have a billboard, that goes, hey, this and that, we should know each other because of X, Y, Z. There's nothing like that. And people don't go with tags around them, but the one thing we all share is you meet people on a daily basis through various circumstances. So if you normalize knowing people at the end of the month, you should ask, did I get to know anyone new? Did I get to know anyone new? And what do they do? How can I be of help to that person? So it's good to think of conversations in that sense. Yeah, so that would be my take on that.
I agree, 100% agree. I look at it just slightly different, Anthony. And the way I do is I'm usually curious about systems. So like how things work, right? So when I first got here, I'd moved into a house, had bought my first house maybe about a year after moving. And a knock came to my door from one of my neighbors, Wayne, who was part of the neighborhood association. And he says, you should join our neighborhood association. So that got me curious because I had no idea, I had the stereotype of what a neighborhood association was, people complaining about the drugs and the crime. And so I really had to, that built the curiosity because I didn't want to stay hinged to that stereotype. So to start to understand what are neighborhood associations, how do they create positive impact on the community, who runs them, that sort of thing. So that is usually my entry point to a whole network of people, right? So going to my first association meeting, understanding the network of Rochester neighborhoods and who leads those, an organization called Our Neighbors, the Neighborhood Resource Center, who runs that? How do I get on that board? What kind of impact are they making? That's one branch. And usually there's a couple of these branches going at the same time. So, on another side, business, who groups like Ready and others, who do I need to know? What conversations should I be having with them? That sort of thing. How does the policing system work? All of these, pinpoint, I'm curious about how this works. And then you start to understand the players and the friendships that are realized as a result of asking the questions, just like you asked, how do I get to the library, is like an entry point to conversations. And so as a result, you kind of build a community map. And I think every entrepreneur should start to, you may have different thoughts on this, but to start to build out the map of their community on the who's who, but not for any other reason than forming friendships, right? Don't hinge, I would say anyways, is don't hinge a connection on this person can be useful to me. No, hinge it on friendship. And then when you do have a question, when you do have a need, then you're reaching out to that person as a friend, first and foremost, but with a need or with an ask, that doesn't become so heavy then, that's the way I would think of it, as the next step on build on understand your community, local or afar. I know, I have a community in Egypt, for example, with friends and family. Anthony, you have a community in Kenya. Understand your communities and then start to build ideas on them.
Yeah, that's true. When you make these connections, it always is very useful that these are your friends, because even when we face any problem that needs resolving, and subconsciously, we're always thinking amongst our friends who has access to certain information or who would know how to solve this before we can even think, should I Google to see who does this? So, and when a friend knows something that can solve a problem, it always comes in. It always is more handy than, let's say, when you Google it.
So I wanted to ask you guys, how did you both originally meet each other? And then, you've both built different teams for different projects. So, when you're meeting someone, how do you assess if that person's a good team member?
So, Ahmed, go first.
Yeah, my thing, this is a partial weakness on my part. When somebody introduces themselves to me, and others have this same issue, but when someone introduces themselves and mentions their name and then goes off, and then I start really getting interested in, what's your story? The name goes out the window in a split second. And I really wish I was better at this. Maybe I should work on it. But what I try to do is try to pick up on whether, what makes this person tick. And there's the first impression, and then I have questions, and I try to keep it from being an interview, but it's everything I want to do is really find out, get both the kind of the qualitative and quantitative research done on someone in a friendly way as an introduction. So to understand what makes them tick, what are their goals, because I'm going to keep all this information, even the portions of it that I can retain anyways, as to what they're looking for in life, what are they doing versus what do they want to be doing, and that sort of thing. So when I think we met at Collider. It was at Collider, just kind of understanding. I just had a question about, where understanding that Anthony had done web and mobile apps. So just trying to understand, what do I look for in a mobile app developer? How can I source or find one that would be good for this app? I start sketching out the idea, but at the same time, I think, I had forgotten the name instantly, because then I'm very keen on understanding, whether we would be a good match friendship wise. What are we syncing on the idea? Are we syncing on the questions and answers? That kind of thing. It becomes pretty apparent even with a quick 15-20 minute conversation, whether you have this connection on the entrepreneurial level, on the friendship level, et cetera. So I thought that was a pivotal moment, just kind of whiteboarding on a table this idea, and so we're on the same page as to what's needed. So kick it to you, Anthony.
Yeah. So when it comes to building teams, I think I've built a lot of teams over the years, and mostly, previously before Rochester, over the years, I've had to build teams for different products, different projects, and that has always been based on what is one's capability, what is how much pressure can they take, because in this space that's extremely important, and also how well is this person likely to understand all the complexities and nitty-gritties that go towards that particular product. So as a team leader, that is one thing I look at. And how well will this person work with other members of that team? Given that in today's world, you find that a team is scattered. You have one person in this location, another in a different location, sometimes people in different countries. And being able to create a team that works harmoniously can be challenging. And that is why identifying the things I've listed is extremely important. That is one side. On the other side, I also need to understand the person that needs the product or the person that owns the project. How well versed are they in what they need? What are some of the information or knowledge gaps that exist that you might need to bring them up to speed on? Also, how friendly is this person? Because you want, if they are experiencing a challenge, you want to know about that, because maybe the challenge they're experiencing might impact the project. And you're in this space where you have to translate the product and also ensure that the team you're managing is working efficiently. So when you have a conversation, you want to understand how much more is my now you will say you are team player going to require in terms of what are we going to teach them, or what are some of the things they overlooked about their product. And I think we also engaged in that conversation with Ahmed, where we were like, okay, so this is what has been done, this is what needs to be done, but there are also a number of things that have not been factored into, and they might affect the product. So always look at it from that lens, because it's extremely difficult to do anything if all these things are not in sync. And I think some of them, they come with years and experience. As you do more, you become better at identifying the qualities that make a good team player.
Definitely. One thing I'll add just real quick is, for far too long, I was not the team creator. I was really trying to expand on how can I be the best one-man band that I can be. And this was almost self-defeating once you start to grow. It's fine up to some stage. You do want to be the self-starter and do all the things and learn about, the accounting, the finance, the project management. But once you grow to some stage, I think as an entrepreneur, you should really start slowly flipping that coin into what are the areas that I want to focus on and be the leader of, and where do I want to grow a team? Like, what are the skill sets that I would really like to find a team member that I can jive with, as Anthony mentions, but add to my team that we're able to sync on these things so that he or she can take on the programming or the accounting or the leadership position. And I would trust that, start to build that trust for and with.
We're getting near the end of our time, so I wanted to ask you both kind of, I don't even know if it's a question, but, people want to end these things by having something to take away that they can apply to either their personal or professional life, whether that's some kind of resource in the community that you found to be useful, or some kind of strategy that you've used in your personal or professional life. I think there have been a lot in here, but I'll ask you both for, one final thing that people can really take away and apply moving forward.
Yeah, I think what I can say is, if you're getting started as an entrepreneur, or if you've been thinking about it, the best way to know whether this will work out for you is to just start. And you sometimes will fail a lot, and sometimes even things that look like, this is straightforward, this is going to happen. Sometimes you encounter very strange twists on your path. So having the mentality that it might fail, but you will also do your best and try to look for help is important. So don't be afraid to start, look for help. Sometimes it will fail, and if something fails, just maybe relook at your strategy, change it, and don't spend too much time like crafting a strategy because strategy changes based on dynamics. Something that worked 2 months ago might not work this month. So, and being able to very quickly adapt and evolve with the changes is going to be very helpful in an entrepreneur's journey.
I was going to go a different direction with this, but based on our conversation, here's where I'd like to take it is understand yourself. in any, like, no matter what you're building or for who or for what reason, understand your own strengths and weaknesses so that whatever you're building can be stronger as a result. And I say that as someone who worked with a life and career coach in Rochester. Happy to share with whoever needs that information. But it was a great way to identify the strengths, my top strengths in my profile, to understand how those look, or to start to understand what those look like when overused, when not used enough, what the weaknesses might be, how, given a certain challenge, what it might look like for me versus someone else, and how I can, who I should reach out to in those moments. I think that saves you a lot of time. And the earlier you can connect with someone like that, sort of outside of your circle, that can become your trusted resource on your growth, the better. I would say definitely the better. I came into it a little late, and I think just having gone through a portion of the process, that I would have definitely benefited earlier on. It's not just a luxury; it's something that you can really start getting on, whether it's like one conversation a month sort of thing, just to get a taste of like what you start learning about yourself before you ever start trying to engage and do business with others. It makes a big difference. That would be my takeaway.
Yeah, I love both of those. And yeah, I'll ask one final time in case we did not mention it. Where can people find Quizzem on the web, and how can they connect in with that product?
Anthony, straight to you.
Yeah, so one can get Quizzem on the Play Store and also on the App Store. So it works for Android devices and iPhones and iPads. So later there'll be a web version, so they can also go to quizzem.app. But that one is not yet available to use on the web, but it's available on the iOS and Android platforms. In terms of use, I'll let Ahmed take that.
Yeah, I would say whether you're a teacher, a parent, a mentor, a tutor, these are definitely all the use cases that we have this built out for, a coach, etc. That is where you can find us. We have a Facebook page and a Facebook users group as well. So just search for Quizzem, Quizzem.
So, well, thanks for doing this today. I appreciate your time and sharing your story.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you for having us.
Thanks so much to Anthony and Ahmed for this wonderful conversation that they shared with us today. I really hope you found at least one thing to take away from it. I know I did. I've listened into it multiple times at this point and have learned something new each time I listened in. So you can learn more about Quizzem through the links in our show notes, or you can find the app for Android, iPhone, and iPad devices on the Play Store or App Store. We're always looking for great Rochester-based entrepreneurs to have as guests on our podcast. So if you know of a great Rochester entrepreneur with a story to share, let us know. Send us an email at rochesterrising@gmail.com and let us know why they have a fantastic story. We're also always looking for sponsors for this podcast. So if our mission to amplify the stories of Rochester entrepreneurs is something you want to support, let us know. Again, you can send us an email or you can click on the sponsor link on our website. Just wanted to mention as well, we've been doing a relatively new coffee break on Fridays on the Collider and Rochester Rising Facebook and YouTube pages. So you can tune in at 10 a.m. on every Friday and hear an update of not only the stories that we told on Rochester Rising that week, but other news and programming that's going on at Collider. So to really tune in with what's going on in the entrepreneurial ecosystem, catch up with us 10 a.m. every Friday on the Rochester Rising Facebook and YouTube pages. And if you can't tune in at 10 a.m., it'll be there saved after it finishes airing, so you can check in at any time and catch up with what's going on at Rochester Rising and Collider. That's a wrap for us on the podcast today. Be sure you subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen into your audio content so that you never miss a story of entrepreneurship and innovation coming out of Rochester, Minnesota. Tune back in next week for a brand new episode.